Emily Carter was just a waitress at Grill Haven, ignored and overlooked by everyone around her. But when a quiet, unassuming man walked into the restaurant, Emily was the only one who treated him with kindness. Little did she know, he was Jonathan Wells, the owner of the entire Grill Haven chain. Her simple act of decency caught his attention, but it also made her a target. Fired for standing up to the corrupt system, Emily thought her life was over. But Jonathan had other plans. He saw something in her, a spark of integrity and resilience. Now Emily must return to Grill Haven, not as a waitress, but as its manager. But with enemies lurking at every corner, can she survive the battle ahead? Emily Carter's life revolved around two things: her son, Jake, and her job at Grill Haven. As a single mother, she worked double shifts, barely making enough to pay rent and buy groceries. Her days started before sunrise and ended long after Jake had gone to bed. Despite her hard work, she faced constant discrimination at the restaurant. Her colleagues, led by Tracy and Kyle, often ignored her or made snide remarks. Mark, the manager, turned a blind eye to their behavior, favoring those who flattered him. One evening, as Emily wiped down tables after a long shift, she overheard Tracy and Kyle laughing about how they had ignored a customer who didn't look like a good tipper. Emily clenched her fists, but said nothing. She couldn't afford to lose this job. As she walked home, she thought about Jake, who had been asking for a new pair of shoes for months. She promised herself that one day things would change. The next day, a quiet, unassuming man walked into Grill Haven. He was dressed simply in a button-up shirt and dark slacks, and carried himself with an air of calm confidence. Tracy and Kyle glanced at him, but quickly turned away, assuming he wasn't worth their time. Emily, however, approached him with a warm smile. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Grill Haven. What can I get for you?" she asked. The man looked up, surprised by her kindness. "Just a black coffee, please," he said. Emily nodded and quickly brought him his coffee. As she walked away, she noticed Tracy and Kyle smirking at her. "Waste of time," Kyle muttered under his breath. The man, Jonathan Wells, watched Emily closely as she worked. He noticed how she treated every customer with respect, regardless of how they looked or how much they ordered. When he finished his coffee, he left a generous tip and a note that read, "Thank you for your kindness." A few days later, Emily witnessed Mark yelling at a young customer who had complained about his order. The boy looked no older than Jake, and Emily couldn't stay silent. "Mark, he's just a kid. Let me fix his order," she said, stepping forward. Mark turned to her, his face red with anger. "Stay out of this, Emily. You're just a waitress." Emily stood her ground. "No, Mark. I'm someone who cares about our customers." Mark's eyes narrowed. "You're fired. Get out." Emily's heart sank as she packed her things and left the restaurant. That night she sat on her couch, staring at the bills piled on the table. She didn't know how she would tell Jake. The next morning, her phone rang. It was Jonathan Wells. "Emily, this is Jonathan. I heard what happened. I want to offer you a job, not as a waitress, but as the new manager of Grill Haven." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "Why me?" "Because you're the kind of leader this place needs," Jonathan replied. As the new manager, Emily faced immediate resistance. Tracy and Kyle refused to take orders from her, and Mark's loyalists spread rumors about her. But Emily didn't back down. She started by holding a staff meeting. "I know this is a big change," she said, "but I believe we can make Grill Haven a place where everyone is treated fairly. If you're willing to work with me, I'm here to support you." Slowly, the staff began to come around. Emily introduced new policies, like fair shift assignments and transparent tip distribution. She also made it a point to listen to her employees, addressing their concerns and celebrating their successes. One evening, as Emily locked up the restaurant, Jonathan walked in. "I've been watching you," he said. "You've done more in a few weeks than Mark did in years." Emily smiled. "I couldn't have done it without your support." Jonathan nodded. "This is just the beginning, Emily. I see a bright future for you." As she walked home, Emily felt a sense of pride she hadn't felt in years. She had proven her resilience and leadership, not just to others, but to herself. Grill Haven was supposed to be a place where people came to enjoy good food and warm service. But behind the scenes, it was a toxic workplace ruled by favoritism and discrimination. Mark, the manager, and Tracy, his right hand, ran the restaurant like their personal fiefdom. They manipulated the staff, giving the best shifts and tips to their favorites while ignoring or mistreating everyone else. Emily Carter, a hard-working waitress, had seen it all. She watched as Tracy flirted with customers to get bigger tips, and as Mark turned a blind eye to her behavior. She saw how Kyle, another employee, was bullied into doing extra work without compensation. But Emily kept her head down, knowing she couldn't afford to lose her job. One evening, as Emily cleaned up after a busy shift, she overheard Mark and Tracy laughing in the office. "Did you see Emily's face when I gave her the worst tables?" Tracy sneered. "She's so desperate, she'll do anything to keep this job." Emily clenched her fists but said nothing. She had Jake to think about. A few days later, Emily noticed something strange. Orders were being messed up, customers were complaining, and the restaurant's reputation was suffering. At first, she thought it was just bad luck. But then she overheard Tracy talking to Kyle. "Make sure the next order is wrong," Tracy said. "We need to make Emily look bad." Emily's heart raced. She realized that Mark and Tracy were sabotaging the restaurant to make her fail. They wanted her gone, and they were willing to destroy the business to do it. That night, Emily stayed late after her shift. She went through the order logs and found discrepancies, orders that had been altered after they were placed, charges that had been added without the customer's knowledge. She also found emails between Mark and Tracy discussing their plan to teach Emily a lesson. Emily knew she had to act, but she couldn't do it alone. Emily decided to gather evidence to expose Mark and Tracy. She started documenting every instance of sabotage, taking photos of altered orders and recording conversations. She also reached out to other employees who had been mistreated, encouraging them to come forward. One evening, as the restaurant was closing, Emily confronted Mark and Tracy in the office. "I know what you're doing," she said, slamming a folder of evidence on the table. "You're sabotaging the restaurant to get rid of me." Mark laughed. "You think anyone will believe you? You're just a waitress." Emily didn't back down. "I have proof, and I'm not the only one who's tired of your corruption." Tracy's smirk faded as Emily played a recording of their conversation about sabotaging orders. Mark's face turned red with anger. "You're finished, Emily," he growled. But before he could say more, Jonathan Wells walked in. He had been watching everything from the security cameras. Jonathan wasted no time in taking action. He fired Mark and Tracy on the spot and handed control of the restaurant to Emily. "You've proven yourself, Emily," he said. "Now it's time to rebuild." Emily started by holding a staff meeting. "I know this place has been through a lot," she said, "but together, we can make it better. No more favoritism, no more discrimination. Just fairness and respect." Slowly, the restaurant began to heal. Customers returned, and the staff worked together like never before. Emily introduced new policies, like fair shift assignments and transparent tip distribution. She also made it a point to listen to her employees, addressing their concerns and celebrating their successes. One evening, as Emily locked up the restaurant, she looked at the Grill Haven sign with pride. It wasn't just a job anymore. It was her mission. Jonathan Wells, the owner of the Grill Haven chain, had built his empire on the principles of quality and customer service. But lately, he had been hearing troubling reports about one of his locations, Grill Haven in Atlanta. Complaints about poor service, incorrect orders, and rude staff had been piling up. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Jonathan decided to visit the restaurant incognito. Dressed in a simple button-up shirt and dark slacks, Jonathan walked into Grill Haven on a busy Saturday evening. The restaurant was bustling, but something felt off. The staff seemed disorganized, and the customers looked frustrated. Jonathan took a seat at a corner table, observing everything quietly. He noticed how some customers were ignored, while others were treated with excessive attention. He saw Mark, the manager, chatting with Tracy, instead of addressing the long line at the counter. And then he saw her, Emily Carter. Emily was a whirlwind of efficiency and kindness. Despite the chaos around her, she moved with purpose, taking orders, serving food, and cleaning tables with a smile. Jonathan watched as she approached a family who had been waiting for their food for over 20 minutes. "I'm so sorry for the delay," Emily said, her voice sincere. "Let me check on your order and get you some complimentary drinks while you wait." The family's frustration melted away, and they thanked her warmly. Jonathan was impressed. Later, when a customer spilled their drink, Emily was the first to respond. She cleaned up the mess quickly and reassured the embarrassed customer. "Don't worry, it happens to the best of us," she said with a laugh. Jonathan couldn't help but notice how different Emily was from the rest of the staff. While others seemed indifferent or even hostile, she radiated professionalism and kindness. A few days later, Jonathan returned to Grill Haven, this time as himself. He called a staff meeting and addressed everyone. "I've been hearing a lot of complaints about this location," he said, his voice calm but firm. "And after my visit, I can see why." Mark tried to defend himself. "Sir, we've been under a lot of pressure lately. It's not easy managing this place." Jonathan cut him off. "No, Mark. The problem isn't the pressure, it's your leadership, or lack thereof." He turned to Emily. "Emily, I've been watching you. You're the only one here who truly cares about the customers and this restaurant. That's why I'm promoting you to manager." The room erupted in murmurs. Tracy glared at Emily while Kyle looked shocked. Mark's face turned red with anger. "You can't do this!" Mark shouted. "I just did," Jonathan replied. "Pack your things and leave." After Mark and Tracy were gone, Jonathan sat down with Emily to discuss her new role. "This won't be easy," he said. "You'll face resistance from some of the staff, and there's a lot of work to be done. But I believe in you." Emily nodded, feeling both excited and nervous. "I won't let you down, sir." Over the next few weeks, Jonathan mentored Emily, teaching her the ins and outs of running a successful restaurant. He showed her how to analyze financial reports, manage inventory, and motivate her team. One evening, as they reviewed the restaurant's progress, Jonathan smiled. "You've done an incredible job, Emily. This place is thriving because of you." Emily felt a surge of pride. "Thank you, sir. I couldn't have done it without your support." Jonathan leaned back in his chair. "This is just the beginning, Emily. I see a bright future for you in this company." Grill Haven was a place of contradictions. On the surface, it was a bustling restaurant with a loyal customer base. But behind the scenes, it was a divided workplace. Some employees, like Tracy and Kyle, thrived under Mark's rule, enjoying the perks of favoritism. Others, like Leah and Carlos, suffered in silence, overworked and underappreciated. Emily Carter had always been caught in the middle. She wasn't part of Mark's inner circle, but she wasn't openly targeted either. She kept her head down, focusing on her work and her son, Jake. But after being promoted to manager, she knew things had to change. On her first day as manager, Emily called a staff meeting. "I know this place has been through a lot," she said, "but together, we can make it better. No more favoritism, no more discrimination. Just fairness and respect." The room was silent. Some employees, like Leah, looked hopeful. Others, like Tracy, rolled their eyes. Emily wasted no time in implementing new policies. She introduced fair shift assignments, ensuring that everyone got a mix of busy and slow shifts. She also created a transparent tip distribution system, so everyone knew exactly how much they were earning. At first, the changes were met with resistance. Tracy and Kyle complained loudly, accusing Emily of playing favorites. "This is ridiculous," Tracy said. "We've always done things a certain way." But Emily stood her ground. "The old way wasn't working for everyone," she said. "This is about fairness." Leah, a shy cashier, approached Emily after the meeting. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I've been here for 2 years, and this is the first time I've felt like my work matters." Emily smiled. "You're welcome, Leah, and if you ever have any concerns, my door is always open." As the weeks went by, the employees began to see the benefits of Emily's leadership. The restaurant ran more smoothly, and customers noticed the difference. One evening, during a busy dinner rush, the kitchen fell behind on orders. In the past, this would have led to chaos, with everyone blaming each other. But this time, something different happened. "Leah, can you help me with these drinks?" Emily called out. On it, Leah replied, rushing to the drink station. Carlos, can you check on table 5? Emily asked. Already on it, Carlos said, grabbing a tray of food. Even Kyle, who had been skeptical of Emily's changes, pitched in. I'll take care of the fries, he said, stepping up to the fryer. For the first time, the staff worked together as a team. Under Emily's leadership, Grill Haven became a positive and productive workplace. The employees felt valued and motivated, and their enthusiasm showed in their work. One evening, as the restaurant was closing, Emily gathered the staff for a quick meeting. I just want to say how proud I am of all of you, she said. We've come a long way, and it's because of your hard work and dedication. Leah smiled. We couldn't have done it without you, Emily. Carlos nodded. You've made this place feel like a family. Even Kyle, who had once been one of Emily's biggest critics, had to admit that things were better. I didn't think it would work, he said, but you proved me wrong. As Emily locked up the restaurant that night, she felt a sense of pride she hadn't felt in years. She had not only transformed Grill Haven, but also inspired her employees to grow and thrive. Emily had always suspected that something was off at Grill Haven. Orders were being messed up, customers were complaining, and the restaurant's reputation was suffering. But it wasn't until she overheard Tracy and Kyle talking in the break room that she realized the truth. Make sure the next order is wrong, Tracy said. We need to make Emily look bad. Emily's heart raced. She realized that Mark and Tracy were sabotaging the restaurant to make her fail. They wanted her gone, and they were willing to destroy the business to do it. That night, Emily stayed late after her shift. She went through the order logs and found discrepancies. Orders that had been altered after they were placed. Charges that had been added without the customer's knowledge. She also found emails between Mark and Tracy discussing their plan to teach Emily a lesson. Emily knew she had to act, but she couldn't do it alone. Emily decided to gather evidence to expose Mark and Tracy. She started documenting every instance of sabotage, taking photos of altered orders and recording conversations. She also reached out to other employees who had been mistreated, encouraging them to come forward. One evening, as the restaurant was closing, Emily called a secret meeting with Leah, Carlos, and a few other trusted employees. I know what Mark and Tracy are doing, she said. They're sabotaging the restaurant to get rid of me. But if we work together, we can stop them. Leah nodded. I've been waiting for someone to stand up to them. Carlos added, I'm in. What do you need us to do? Emily smiled. Just keep doing your jobs and document everything. We'll expose them when the time is right. A few days later, Emily had enough evidence to confront Mark and Tracy. She called a staff meeting and addressed everyone. I know what's been happening here, she said, her voice steady. Orders are being messed up, customers are being overcharged, and it's all part of a plan to make me look bad. Mark laughed. You're paranoid, Emily. No one's sabotaging anything. Emily didn't back down. She pulled out a folder of evidence and handed it to Jonathan Wells, who had been quietly observing the meeting. This is proof, she said. Altered orders, fake charges, and emails between Mark and Tracy discussing their plan. Jonathan's face darkened as he reviewed the evidence. He turned to Mark and Tracy. Is this true? Tracy's smirk faded, and Mark's face turned red with anger. You can't prove anything, he said. But Jonathan wasn't convinced. You're both fired, effective immediately. With Mark and Tracy gone, Emily took full control of the restaurant. She called another staff meeting to address the employees. I know this has been a difficult time, she said, but now it's time to move forward. Together, we can make Grill Haven a place we're all proud to work at. The employees applauded, and even Kyle, who had once been skeptical of Emily's changes, had to admit that she had earned their respect. Over the next few weeks, Emily implemented new policies to ensure fairness and transparency. She also made it a point to listen to her employees, addressing their concerns and celebrating their successes. One evening, as Emily locked up the restaurant, she looked at the Grill Haven sign with pride. It wasn't just a job anymore. It was her mission,